Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dane. We have for you today a 2 versus 2 on Point du Hoc. Forces of the Wehrmacht facing off against the Allies in an attempt to hold the beaches of Normandy. As one of the Wehrmacht commanders we have Dep of Kampfgruppe Dep, and we have Superpanzer of the 17th SS Panzer Division, probably, holding off against the Americans. Generalfingold of the 1st Infantry Division, Able Company, and we have the British of Martindenhaer, I believe. I'm not entirely sure if that's how he wants it pronounced. It's a bit of an odd name. But nonetheless, as the British 1st Infantry Division, possibly 30th Corps of some infantry battalion, but certainly going to be an interesting combination to face off against. There are certain synergies with the British and Americans in 2 versus 2 games, since the British headquarters command truck can move out, secure fuel point, and get both players a large amount of fuel very quickly early on, allowing either player to rush for vehicles and armor. There are certainly some problems with that. Some would say, personally, I'm a bit undecided, although at times it can be a bit tiresome, as the tactics and strategies involved can get quite repetitive. But let's get this fight started, if the start button would be so kind as to allow me to. Superpanzer seems a bit passive, although going out quickly, not building a Wehrmacht quarters. Dep, on the other hand, sighting a Wehrmacht quarters right out front his Reich headquarters. And for the Americans, we see a barracks going up, and the recon section rushing out, while it seems like Martin is creating something, possibly a Bren carrier, possibly officer, possibly a infantry section. Both pioneers used to set up the Wehrmacht quarters, and another one going down by Superpanzer, while a 3rd pioneer team is on the field. Certainly going to be a bit aggressive. In fact, he has 4 pioneer teams on the field. Awfully aggressive. And we see a 2nd infantry section out for the British, while Dep is finally moving out to secure territory. Although Superpanzer's pioneers have quickly bypassed the recon section, who are now laying down a slit trench. Certainly looks like this is going to be the main focus point of the British efforts, and by the next patch, recon sections won't be able to dig in with slit trenches, which has been a bit of a problem, since infantry in trenches are very, very difficult to deal with unless you have flamethrowers or anything similar. That can be a bit difficult to acquire early on. A jeep on the field rushing ahead, a Willys jeep with a 30 cal on top. Tank traps going down, probably to prevent any attempt by a headquarters command truck to move down here. Pioneers finding themselves under fire while trying to take down this type of tank trap, which is called Dragon's Teeth. The other type is called Hedgehogs or Czech Hedgehogs, depending on who you ask, I believe. Exchange between engineers and pioneers. Pioneers on the losing end, since they're not in the proper cover. Bike rushing ahead, and some pioneers moving ahead as well. Not a lot out from Dep, in fact, although now a heavy machine gun team is out, and a machine gun. So that's actually the 2nd machine gun team, my mistake. Certainly not a lot of infantry though for Dep, and none for Superpanzer either. They seem to be going on a heavy support strategy. Not my favorite, not one I'd recommend, since it leaves one with a lot less initiative and allows the enemy to strike wherever he wants. And we have a Bren carrier out for the British. Lovely little thing. Bike suppressing the engineers trying to seize the victory point, although now finding yourself under rifle fire and forced to retreat. 2nd MG42 moving forwards from the Wehrmacht quarters. The British continuing to dig in the center alongside the victory point as well. Jeep forced back under heavy machine gun fire, it seems, or at least the threat of it. Superpanzer is up to something, not sure. Brand carrier moving in to support the jeep. This is going to be dangerous, although now moving into the bunkers. And one should note that with the next patch these bunkers will be gone, but the MG42 can for now use one of these slits to fire out of it, covering this munitions point. One of the only few units I'd recommend putting into one of these bunkers, since you can't really get much effective rifle fire out of it. Pantosheks and bazookas could also be used for this. Minor fighting in the fuel point on the high ground. Jeeps taking fire from the motorbike. Might have to retreat now that the MG42 is sighting on this as well, although now going to be flanked by riflemen. Unfortunate situation for Dep, who seems to be setting up a bunker. Probably going to get an MG bunker to cover this approach. Although he should be careful not to lose this area.
Attention! The enemy advances!
And now the Americans are encroaching further on their territory. This is certainly not looking to be a good start. Skirmish phase being researched for Dep. Probably the same for Superpanzer, who currently have no infantry on the field. A sniper, in fact, now being caught out in the open by a jeep. This is dangerous. Could certainly end well for the... not end well for the sniper. Indeed, it looks like he's going to be cut down before he even gets to fire one shot. And this is sort of the danger about moving snipers ahead without support. Indeed, and there he goes. Completely dead, and the jeep dashes away with only minimal damage. American converging on the Dep's positions, only helped by some pioneers and a machine gun team. Things are looking not well for the German forces at this moment. They are hard pressed and unable to really seize any territory or strike back at the British or Americans, who are now currently ruling the fields and hills of Point du Hoc. And now we see a mortar emplacement going up, certainly going to make any attempts at seizing this area much more difficult. Further fighting here as the pioneers are forced to retreat. Creek barracks going up for Dep, and MG42 is being reinforced so it can do something a bit further. A medic bunker was placed here actually. That's certainly going to help a bit, although with only pioneer teams and such to pull from, it's going to be a bit of a slow endeavor. And we see the Brand carrier now taking fire from the MG42, the bike being one of the best units to deal with a Brand carrier early on, in fact. Although the pioneers should be careful about conducting repairs while under fire, since while under repairing stuff you will take more damage, and the pioneers paid for that. MG42 causing heavy damage to the Brand carrier that should probably pull back, and is doing so now to live another day. And we see it has been upgraded with the 30 caliber Vickers machine gun. That's certainly going to be advantageous, allow it to support infantry, and generally quite a nuisance. British holding out in the center as well, still now hooked up through here with their main territory now. Could be cut off if the German troops seize this point, but so far no intention of doing so. Brand carrier rushing forward, minor skirmishing in the left now that a mortar is being brought out to flush out the machine gun team holding out in this old building. 2 team members down. Really should consider retreating before all is lost. Oh dear, the MG42 team didn't make it out of there alive. Now seizing territory, although still lacking infantry, it seems, for Dep, although now he has a mortar team on the field. The bunker now caught out in the open, going to be knocked out quite soon unless Dep manages something to deal with it. A field support truck moving out for Martindenhaer. Martindenhaer, I think. Not moving out to secure any points, though in fact both are going to stay here. That I would not entirely recommend. For example, there are some good munitions or fuel points near here, but instead he chooses both to be sighted at the central position. Flamethrowers almost having blown up the bunker, which have yet to actually secure any wounded. Now we see that Generalfingold have his 101st Airborne on the field. Perhaps not entirely historical, as Point du Hoc was actually stormed by the Rangers, who were there to take out an artillery battery sighted on Point du Hoc, which was covering the beaches. That's just a bit of history.
MG-42 reporting.
And they are quite stalking around. The Americans and Allies, General Allied Force has most of the territory still. No actual infantry for the German troops. This is quite disconcerting, and they are certainly suffering for it because they don't really have anything that can keep on going in a fight. Mortars standing around, not packed out, and American mortars will by the next patch, by the way, be quicker to set up and go away, so that should be a bit helpful. MG-42 team taking the medium munitions point further by being covered by a mortar, and 2 mortars in fact. That seems a bit wasteful and a bit dangerous, in particular when there are no anti-tank assets. But now a grenadier team is finally on the way, and it looks like that Dep has a lot of munitions. Let's go have a look at Superpanzer. He has also gone defensive, in fact quite a passive set of strategies from these two players, which can be a bit dangerous if they get too far pushed back, since they won't have anything that can actually help them in a counter-attack to regain what is lost. So that should be watched out for. Pioneers with flamethrowers standing ready nearby might want to rush in and help, although might be nothing they can actually do, and the MG-42 team was flushed from the bunker. Bit of movement in the north, it seems, trying to retake this area, and we have the 1st Grenadier team with a Panzerschreck on the field, the first actual infantry team for the Germans.
We are losing
I certainly say that was a bit late. And we have some complaints that one is feeling like he's being ganged up on by his opponents, which is completely fair, although again, considering none had any infantry to actually conduct anything more mobile, it's not entirely understandable, and this is why I warn against only relying on support teams, since they can just pick on one and the other player won't have much to actually react with. Moving on to Martindenhaer. He has not gone for any doctrines, he has plenty of fuel and manpower, and nothing really being made for him. A sapper team is on the field. 2 are in fact on the field. Probably going to set up some emplacements then, I suspect. 17 pounders, Bofors, or 25 pounders most likely. Yep, a 17 pounder to cover the central field.